but in the person I've become over the last 2.5 years. But how does a shy, bullied teenager with a once-in-a-generation voice walk onto Britain's Got Talent, leave the judges speechless, and still lose to a dancing dog? This isn't just a talent show story. This is Jonathan Antoine, the opera prodigy who went viral overnight, stunned the world, then slowly slipped from the spotlight. A journey shaped by bullying, heartbreak, a transformation, and a turning point no one expected. March 24th, 2012, the moment everything changed. 17 years old, standing on that stage beside Charlotte Giaconelli, just 16, two teenagers, a classical duo, and to most people watching, they didn't look like contenders. The judges didn't hide it. Simon Cowell took one look, nervous, overweight, dressed like any ordinary kid, and the skepticism was immediate, the kind of glance that says, "This won't go far." The other judges weren't any different. It was uncomfortable, almost cruel, because behind that moment stood a boy who had already endured years of bullying, now facing doubt in front of the entire country. Then, he sang. The first note of the prayer didn't just land, it froze the room. Simon's expression changed instantly. Amanda Holden's eyes widened. The audience erupted before the first verse was even finished. This wasn't good. This was something else entirely. Jonathan's voice rose through the theater, powerful, controlled, filled with emotion far beyond his years. When it ended, the reaction was explosive. Simon Cowell, the same man who doubted him seconds earlier, now compared him to Luciano Pavarotti. One of the greatest tenors in history. The shift was staggering. "You are one of the most amazing talents I've ever heard." And just like that, the internet lit up. Millions of views, global headlines. Overnight, Jonathan transformed from a bullied teenager into an international sensation. But then, everything twisted. During the auditions, Simon made a suggestion that stunned everyone. Go solo, leave Charlotte behind. On national television, he implied the partner who stood beside him was holding him back. Still, the duo pushed forward. May 7th, the semifinals. Caruso, powerful, controlled, enough to carry them into the finals on May 12th. They performed the prayer again. Another standing ovation. It felt inevitable. Victory was within reach. Except, it wasn't. They came second. Beaten by Ashley and Pudsey, a dancing dog act. Yes, a dancing dog. The moment hit hard. Jonathan later described it as feeling everything drop inside him. But on that stage, he didn't cry. So was that the end? Or the beginning of something bigger? Because here's the truth. On Britain's Got Talent, second place doesn't always mean second best. By the very next day, everything shifted again. Simon was already negotiating. May 13th, 2012, it was confirmed. A £1 million record deal with Seco. They didn't win the show. They won something else entirely. Their debut album together launched later that year, in September in the UK, October in the US. It surged into the charts, top 5 in the UK. Hundreds of thousands of copies sold, from rejection to global success. And yet, beneath all of it, this story was only just beginning. The album didn't just succeed, it surged. Classical pieces, soaring arias, and that now iconic rendition of the prayer echoed everywhere. Critics struggled to capture it, calling the voice velvety, rich, and almost unreal. The momentum was relentless. Cameras followed their every move. Television specials documented tours across France and Italy. Even the harshest critic from their earliest days publicly reversed course, offering an on-camera apology that few saw coming. For a moment, it looked untouchable, like a story too perfect to fracture. But behind the applause, something quieter was shifting. Their second album, Perhaps Love, arrived on October 14th, 2013, climbing straight into the charts. It was broader, bolder, blending classical roots with modern influences like You Got the Love and Falling Slowly. Hidden within it was a subtle signal, solo tracks. A small detail, easy to miss, but impossible to ignore in hindsight, because the divide was already there. One voice was drawn deeper into the world of opera, pure, traditional, uncompromising. The other leaned toward musical theater, expressive, modern, expansive. Neither direction was wrong, but they were no longer the same. And under the pressure of global attention, those differences didn't fade, they sharpened. Then came the moment no one expected, February 2nd, 2014. A single announcement and everything changed. After selling hundreds of thousands of albums, after building a devoted global following, after becoming a phenomenon almost overnight, it was over. They were going their separate ways. The statement tried to soften the blow, calling it a shared journey, an unforgettable chapter. But the reality was clearer, colder. Both had been offered solo contracts. Both had chosen to step forward, alone. What once felt like a fairy tale didn't collapse in chaos. It ended in silence. And sometimes, that's what makes it hit even harder. In addition to that, the fact that Sony Classical offered me solo record deals was, without a doubt, the most amazing thing that has ever happened. The positive narrative, however, was not being accepted by the media. It was reported by several sites that Charlotte had broken up with Jonathan. Fans were in utter disbelief. The duet that had won the hearts of people all around the world had come to an end. After a number of years had passed, Jonathan finally revealed the true reasons. My confidence was boosted to the point where I could compete on Big Brother, and together we created something that was absolutely stunning, he explained. Both of us had never been members of an ensemble before. Solo performances were a favorite of ours. Therefore, it was the result of the thing's natural progression. When it comes to crossover classical music, there is a limit to how much a duet can genuinely do before they begin to reimagine the whole thing. It was at that point that I acquired the requisite self-assurance and had a better understanding of who I was. My gut told me that it was time to take the plunge. The translation is that Simon Cowell had been correct the whole time. It was always intended for Jonathan to be a solo artist. However, this is where things start to become complicated. After the breakup, Jonathan and Charlotte talked to each other very little. Jonathan confessed that we don't get to chat very much, but that's simply the nature of the industry. He made this admission during his interview on Lorraine, which was part of your High Enemy Place episode in 2017. You don't really have the opportunity to talk to your buddies when you're grafting since you're so busy. Despite the fact that they had ended their artistic cooperation at the time, Charlotte argued that this did not mean that they would forever cease seeing each other. But in fact, it is precisely what took place. They were no longer in contact. Two individuals who had been best friends since 2006 and who had worked together to build their ambitions were now strangers to one another. The rumors spread like wildfire. Were they ever involved in a romantic relationship? It was impossible to deny the synergy that existed on stage. Nevertheless, both of them have stated that they were never a couple. Friends and professional singing partners are the only exceptions. During one point in time, Charlotte even referred to Jonathan as her brother. Despite this, people were extremely enthusiastic about them, and the romance rumors never completely went off. Was it possible for Jonathan to live on his own? Do you think that the voice that brought him fame would be sufficient if Charlotte were not by his side? The child who discovered his own voice. Nevertheless, we need to go back in time in order to really comprehend Jonathan's tenacity. Long before he received standing ovations and record agreements worth millions of pounds, Jonathan Antoine was just another child suffering from bullying who was trying to make it through life. Jonathan was born on January 13th, 1995, in Hainault, Essex, to a father who worked as a police inspector and a mother who was a housewife. His childhood was marked by unrelenting suffering that began when he was just 4 years old. Can you even fathom it? At the age of 4, individuals are already being targeted. The bullying was cruel, unrelenting, and devastating to the victim's spirit. Although children are capable of being nasty, the treatment that Jonathan received went beyond the ordinary meanness that is found in playgrounds. Everyone made fun of him because of his weight, his appearance, and even his mere presence. As a result of the severity of the attacks, young Jonathan focused his attention on the things that offered him solace, which were food and music. However, this is the point at which the narrative takes an intriguing turn. When I was 11 years old, a certain miracle occurred. At West Hatch High School in Chigwell, where Jonathan was enrolled, he became acquainted with Jenny Ewington, who was a singing coach. There was something that she saw in this broken and mistreated youngster that no one else did. Raw talent that had not yet been utilized, which would one day cause the entire world to halt and listen. Together with him, she worked on works such as Where is Love? From Oliver and Panis Angelicus, which ultimately proved to be his salvation. It was because of the exceptional quality of his voice that kids began to refer to him in a hushed manner as the youngster with the incredible voice. Jonathan tried out for all four of London's most prestigious music conservatories when he was only 14 years old. And what do you think? Everyone agreed with him and accepted him. In the highly regarded junior program at the Royal Academy of Music, he decided to enroll. When he performed Bring Him Home from Les Miserables at the Stratford and East London Music Festival in 2010, he received an unprecedented score of 98 out of 100, which was the highest score ever received at the festival. The young boy who had been discriminated against due to his uniqueness was now being praised for his talent. On the other hand, Jonathan couldn't stop surprise people. He gave a rendition of Ave Maria in the Royal Festival Hall in London in the year 2011. The timid child was gradually developing into a self-assured performer, and individuals all across the world began to take note. When it came time to face the challenges that lay ahead, that foundation, which had been built on years of suffering, self-discovery, and musical sanctuary, would prove to be indispensable. Jonathan's history raises the question of whether or not he might actually succeed as a solo artist. Would he be more prepared for the pressure if he had had those early struggles? It was on October 13, 2014, that a reluctant superstar began his solo career. Jonathan's first solo album, titled Tenore, which is Italian for tenor, was released to the public. Extreme pressure was being exerted. Without Charlotte, would he be able to deliver? Do you think his audience would embrace him as a solo artist? What is the response? It is a resounding yes. As a result of Tenore's meteoric rise to the top of the classical artist album chart, Jonathan became the youngest tenor in the history of the genre to accomplish this impressive feat. Additionally, it earned a spot in the top 15 on the UK pop chart. According to the words of one reviewer, here is a new star on the vocal scene, and his first solo album attests to his miraculous talent. His dramatic rendition of Panis Angelicus was featured on the record, which also highlighted Jonathan's expansive range and profound emotional depth. Placido Domingo, yes, the Placido Domingo, extended a personal invitation to Jonathan to play at the iTunes Festival in 2014 as his guest. This invitation was extended in the same year. Just picture that. It was one of the three tenors who gave his approval to the performance. In addition, Jonathan entertained audiences in Arizona, California, and Florida during the Muhammad Ali Celebrity Fight Night event that took place in 2014. He was expanding his fan base across the globe while touring the United States, demonstrating that he could stand on his own. Believe, his second album, was released on August 19, 2016, and it featured unique collaborations, as well as classical arias by Puccini and Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah. The record also drew inspiration from Michelle Doucet, a waitress from Canada, whom Jonathan had communicated with on the internet. The record was credited to her as the inspiration behind it, and he referred to her as the light of my life. After that, the year 2020 arrived, and with it came the concept album Going the Distance, which was recorded with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and filmed in Toronto with important guests. PBS was the network that broadcast his first television special in the United States. His very first recording of Nessun Dorma, an aria from Puccini's Turandot that is widely regarded as one of the most difficult works in the classical repertoire, was performed during the concert. Jonathan did an excellent job. He had grown up, his voice had become more profound, and it had acquired even more emotional strength. As of this point, Jonathan had already amassed an amazing solo career and was performing on a regular basis around the United States. He had demonstrated that he was capable of performing on his own, in addition to being a member of a duo. The young man who Simon Cowell had questioned was now performing in concert halls all over the world. Even though his concerts were completely sold out and his CDs were at the top of the charts, Jonathan was battling conflicts that no one could see, the obscurity that lies beneath the voice. Achieving success does not eliminate traumatic experiences. Additionally, Jonathan Antoine was left with severe wounds as a result of being bullied as a child. When asked about his struggles with depression, Jonathan has been extremely open and honest in interviews that he has given over the years. The years of suffering, being ridiculed, being physically threatened, and being made to feel devoid of value had taken their toll on the individual. Around the time that he made his debut on Big Brother, he was given a diagnosis of severe depression. Due to the severity of the disease, he was forced to cancel a significant performance that was scheduled to take place at the Royal Albert Hall. Consider the possibility that you would be unable to play at one of the most prominent locations in the world due to the fact that your mental health would not permit you to do so. It was a crushing amount of pressure. Another thing that Jonathan disclosed was a very unhealthy relationship that he had been in around the age of 2018. When he was dating her, she was struggling with major mental health concerns and engaging in unhealthy coping methods. She did not make any attempt to conceal the fact that she struggled with unhealthy coping methods. For someone who was already battling with his own mental health, being in that relationship was a really horrible experience. Later on, he revealed that her problems were never concealed from anyone. Moreover, despite the fact that the relationship did not last forever, it left significant emotional scars. Through it all, Jonathan placed a significant amount of trust in his family. Instead of his former singing partner, his father John, who was a police inspector, his mother Tracy, and his older sister Charlotte were the ones who were involved. They became his unwavering support system, attending all of his performances and providing him with unwavering support at every stage of his journey. But Jonathan did not suffer in quiet during his ordeal. Eventually, he became an advocate for mental health, freely discussing his own struggles with depression and participating in awareness campaigns. With the use of his platform, he hoped to assist others who were going through similar challenges. Additionally, he has collaborated on the writing of other children's books, such as Jonathan and the Porcupine, which contain anti-bullying messages. After having been bullied himself, the boy was now assisting other children in realizing that they are not alone. Then there was the problem with the weight. Throughout his whole life, Jonathan had struggled with his weight, and he had turned to food as a source of comfort during his most difficult times. Between the years 2018 and 2019, he came to the conclusion that enough was enough. Jonathan, who was dealing with a thyroid ailment and equipped with renewed drive, chose to go on a path to lose a significant amount of weight. Did Jonathan only need to lose weight in order to find the solution, or was there something more profound in himself that he had yet to uncover? Everything was altered as a result of the diagnosis. A date in the year 2022. Jonathan was diagnosed with autistic spectrum condition not long after his 27th birthday. A diagnosis that would go on to reframe the entirety of his life. In 2024, on the occasion of Autism Awareness Day, Jonathan made his announcement public by posting on Instagram that he had received his diagnosis in 2022, not long after he became 27 years old. A terrifying issue to take into consideration is the recontextualization of a life that has already been lived. All of a sudden, this made a lot of sense. The difficulty he faced in relationships, the issues he encountered in social situations, the tremendous focus he had on music, and the way he processed the world differently. It wasn't that there was a problem with anything. His brain simply functioned in a different way. The fact that Jonathan was diagnosed with autism helped to explain why the bullying had such a significant impact on him, why relationships had been difficult for him, and why he had always felt like he was slightly out of pace with the overall world. There was a sense of liberation and terror. Because he had a greater understanding of himself, he was able to assist others in comprehending themselves as well. The metamorphosis, however, was not limited to the individual. Everybody was about to be taken aback by Jonathan's remarkable physical look, the remarkable change that took place. The transition that Jonathan went through between the years 2020 and 2024 was one of the most remarkable physical changes in the history of the entertainment industry. Over 70 pounds of weight loss is being discussed here, as much as 120 pounds, according to some sources. The transformation was remarkable. The shift occurred gradually as a result of constant improvements in lifestyle, including engaging in 10,000 steps of walking each day. The only 2 times he has failed to achieve that objective are when he controlled his thyroid issue and when he completely altered his relationship with eating. Jonathan stated that he was feeling stronger and healthier than he had in 10 years, and he explained that the difference was due to the fact that he had finally chosen discipline and intention, which was something that he had struggled with in the past. The year 2024 found Jonathan at a weight of approximately 210 pounds. In photographs, he appeared to have his distinctive curly hair, but his face and body appeared to have significantly lost weight. He gave off the impression of being healthier, more self-assured, and more at ease in his own skin. During the shift, it was not about conforming to the expectations of anyone else. His health was the issue at hand. An almost meditative state developed as a result of the resolve to walk 10,000 steps every day. That discipline, the same rigor that he had brought to his vocal training, was now being applied to his physical health. Also, his followers were overjoyed about it. There were other comments that lauded not only his physical appearance, but also his sincerity, his journey, and his willingness to share the challenges he faced alongside the successes he achieved. And what does that mean for Jonathan Antoine in the present day? What lies next for the tenor who has made it through everything? At this moment, where is Jonathan Antoine? Jonathan is about to enter what he refers to as a powerful new period, which will begin in January of 2026. It was in January that he published All of Me, a magnificent remake of John Legend's iconic song that showcased both his classical skills and his contemporary flair. Sound of Silence and Impossible Dream are two of the songs that can be found on his album Speaking to You, which is the source of the single at hand. On several social media platforms and during live streaming with his devoted fan twins, he has been providing hints about the project. Christmasland, his album dedicated to the holiday season, was published in December of 2024. It is estimated that he has a net worth of $4 million, which he has made through the selling of albums, shows, and appearances on television. This is not a horrible outcome for the young man, who was told he would never amount to anything. What about Charlotte? How about her? It was around this time that she made the shift to musical theater, performing in plays on the West End, such as Sweet Charity and Heathers the Musical. They don't communicate with one another very much, if at all. Do you believe that Believe was inspired by Jonathan's girlfriend, Michelle Doucet? The relationship came to an end, but Jonathan has chosen to keep the circumstances confidential. It has been mentioned that Beyond the High Sea, a documentary focused on Jonathan's life, is currently in the process of being developed. Jonathan is continuing to advocate for projects that aim to combat bullying, promote acceptance of neurodiversity, and raise awareness about mental health. His most recent Instagram posts give the impression that he is genuinely content and at ease in his own skin, which is something he never was when he was a youngster. The narrative of Jonathan Antoine is not about achieving celebrity. The story is about surviving, growing, and not allowing oneself to be broken. From the time he was bullied as a young child to the time he became a viral sensation on Big Brother, from the heartbreaking breakup with Charlotte to his triumphant solo career, from the struggle with depression to the discovery of his autism, from the transformation of his physical health to the acceptance of his true self. His journey has been one of remarkable resilience and constant evolution. Jonathan not only made it through everything, but he thrived on it. His voice became more resonant, and his spirit became more resilient with each struggle. Therefore, the next time you go to see Jonathan Antoine perform, keep in mind that you are not simply watching a singer. You are watching a survivor, an advocate, and a guy who refused to allow the brutality of the world define him. And that is exactly what transpired with Jonathan Antoine, who appeared on Big Brother. If you were moved by his story, please give it a massive like, subscribe to his channel, and share your opinions in the comments section below. Mostly due to the fact that tales such as this one deserve to be heard. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen are officially done. 13 years of marriage, erased in a final signature that ended one of the most powerful celebrity unions in the world. And yet, what unfolded afterward felt less like closure, and more like detonation. Tom Brady holds 7 Super Bowl rings. He has earned more money than most people could imagine in several lifetimes. He is universally labeled the greatest quarterback to ever step onto a field. But on December 20th, 2025, while headlines confirmed that Gisele had quietly moved on and even entered a secret new marriage, Brady posted something that stopped everything. A song about losing control of his own life. The man who mastered every fourth quarter on Earth suddenly looked like he had lost the only game that actually mattered. And now, at 48, he is finally letting pieces of that truth surface, the post that set everything off. Just days earlier, news broke that Gisele Bündchen had secretly married Joaquin Valente, her jiu-jitsu instructor, on December 3rd, 2025. No cameras, no press, just a private ceremony at a Florida home. When that story began spreading, Brady didn't respond with words. He responded with something far more unsettling. He posted an Instagram story featuring the track 1-800-273-8255, a song named after the U.S. Suicide Prevention Hotline, and in it, one line echoed, "I feel like my life is not mine." The next day, he posted a selfie wearing a Forever Young hoodie. One caption, one word. Yup. Was it defiance, collapse, or something in between that nobody was meant to decode? What is clear is this: Brady was not unprepared for this moment. He had been warned long before the world ever saw it coming, and he never forgot it. Back in 2020, during an interview with Howard Stern, Brady revealed something that instantly changed how people viewed his marriage. Gisele had written him a letter. Not a romantic note, not reassurance, a warning. In it, she told him plainly that she was unhappy, that the relationship, as it stood, worked in only one direction: for him. Brady later admitted the truth was harder to hear than anything on a football field. Gisele felt like she was raising their children alone, a single mother inside her own marriage, holding the household together while he chased championships, records, and legacy. 6 months every year, he was gone, fully absorbed in football, pre-dawn workouts, endless film study sessions, travel days that stretched into absences measured not in hours, but in entire weekends. And when the season finally ended, he still didn't truly return home. Instead, the rhythm shifted into business meetings, training demands, brand obligations, and constant movement. Another contract, another commitment, another reason to be somewhere else. There was always something, always another pursuit dressed as necessity, and always quietly less room for family. Gisele wrote that she had ambitions too, dreams she had deliberately set aside for more than a decade to support his ascent. She had left modeling at its peak. She had relocated her entire life across countries and cities. She had adjusted, adapted, and sacrificed pieces of herself to make his career possible. Brady later confessed to Howard Stern that he still keeps that letter, locked away. He reads it from time to time, a reminder of what was slipping through his hands. But the truth cuts deeper than regret. He didn't almost lose it. He lost it. Because even after reading those words, even after counseling, even after promises of change, Brady was already stepping into decisions that would confirm everything Gisele had written, decisions that would quietly erode what was left of the marriage until nothing remained. And it began with what looked at first like a victory. On February 1st, 2022, after 22 seasons and 7 Super Bowl titles, Tom Brady announced his retirement from football. At 44, he declared it was time to step away and focus on life beyond the game. Gisele was relieved, even hopeful. She posted online, celebrating what felt like the start of a new chapter together. After waiting for all those years, after writing that heartbreaking letter, after going through all of the therapy sessions and having all of those difficult conversations, her husband was finally considering his family. And that sensation lasted for exactly 40 days. The entire sporting world was taken aback by Brady's performance on March 13th, 2022. He made the announcement that he would be returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to play for them for another season. His assertion was full of self-assurance. Rather than sitting in the stands, he came to the realization that his place was still on the field. However, what about his residence in the house? Where does he stand with the commitments he made to his wife? Those who are close to Gisele have stated that she was taken completely by surprise. The topic at hand was not limited to football. There was a trust issue here. The two of them had talked about retirement together. As a couple, they had made prearranged plans. Additionally, Brady came to the conclusion on his own that his desires were more important than their agreement. The devastating truth was revealed to the media by a single source. Giselle is fed up with the fact that Tom prioritizes his career over his family, and she is frustrated by this decision. It was stated by another insider that she does not dislike the fact that he plays football, but she does dislike the manner in which he handled the retirement and the return. While Brady was physically present at the beginning of the 2022 season, it was obvious that his mind was elsewhere. It was for personal reasons that he took an 11-day leave from training camp in the month of August. Despite the fact that nobody explained what was going on, everyone was able to speculate. During the month of September, the reports began to pour in. Both Tom and Giselle were residing in their own house at the time. They engaged in a fight of epic proportions. It had been communicated to divorce attorneys. Following the events that transpired during this time period, his former assistant coach, Tom Moore, penned a book about his experiences. What he witnessed in the locker room of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a man who was falling apart completely. Someone who is falling apart. This season, 2022, ought to have been a victory lap for the quarterback, who has been the greatest in the history of the game. On the contrary, it turned into a tragedy that was broadcast on national television each and every particular Sunday. The transformation of Brady into an unrecognizable person was witnessed by Tom Moore. The quarterback, who was well known for his impeccable routine and incredible level of physical fitness, was experiencing a startling reduction in his weight. He lost almost 20 pounds in weight. His appearance became emaciated and hollow. The fiercely competitive spirit that had characterized him for 20 years appeared to be fading away. He sat down facing his locker while still wearing his full uniform. The 7-time Super Bowl champion was still wearing his uniform. After placing his head between his legs, he remained motionless for a period of 20 minutes. There was no one he communicated with. Indeed, he did not change his attire. Neither the coaches nor the teammates who were walking by him were acknowledged by him. He did nothing but sit there, completely unmoving. As he watched his entire world come crashing down around him, he came to the realization that he might have been the one who brought it down. The public was observing the dissolution of the marriage as it occurred in real time. Giselle was photographed without her wedding ring and without her wedding. It had been several weeks since the couple had been seen together. The stories about what went wrong were published in every tabloid. On his podcast, Brady made an attempt to address the issue. He discussed the difficulties that people face in life. Despite the fact that he admitted that football was draining him of everything he had, he was unable to say what everyone else already knew. It was impossible for him to stop the disappearance of his family, which he was witnessing. The divorce was finalized on October 28, 2022, making it official. After 13 years of marriage, Tom Brady and Giselle Bündchen decided to divorce. Due to the fact that they had a prenuptial agreement and had already worked out custody arrangements, the paperwork in question was submitted and finalized on the same day. A statement was issued by both of them stating that they prioritized their children. Though Brady described it as painful and challenging, neither of them disclosed the true reasons that led to the breakup of their relationship. That would come later when Giselle made the decision to tell her side of the story. And what she said would completely alter everything that people believed they knew about their relationship. When a dream comes to an end. Giselle made her first major interview since the divorce in March 2023, when she was featured on the cover of Vanity Fair magazine. In spite of the fact that she was not holding back, she had something very important to say. First, she dispelled the most significant rumor that had been circulating about her for several months. People continued to assert that she presented Tom with a choice, either football or me. Make your decision right now. As far as Giselle was concerned, this tale was the most bizarre thing she had ever heard. She expressed that it was extremely hurtful that people had the misconception that she would act in such a manner. Never once did she insist that he retire. Actually, that was not the case. The real reason was both more straightforward and more profound. She explained that she was 26 years old and he was 29 years old when they first met. Together they desired to have a family. They shared the same desires and goals. As time went on, however, they came to the realization that they desired different things from life. There was not a single choice that brought an end to everything. The years of growing apart eventually reached a point where they were no longer able to recognize each other. On the other hand, Giselle made a statement that went beyond anything that could be said about football. The rumors that she had cheated on Brady with Joaquin Valente caused her to become enraged when reporters asked her about them. According to her, that is a lie. She stated that this is something that occurs to a great number of women who are blamed for leaving an unhealthy relationship when they have the courage to do so. A poor choice. Her relationship with Tom Brady was judged to be unhealthy by her. While discussing the divorce in a different interview with Robin Roberts, she became emotional at times. It was the end of a dream, she referred to it. It was necessary for her to pause and gather her thoughts before continuing. The woman in question did not simply leave without showing any concern. Those who were mourning a future that would never come to pass were this person. It was through 7 Super Bowls that she had been Tom's supporter. In spite of the fact that it hurt her, she had cheered for him. Several times, she had reconstructed her life around his professional endeavors. When he needed to relocate, she would pack up and follow him wherever he went. She made sure to provide him with space whenever he required it. In the end, she came to the conclusion that she had no other option but to leave. This was not because she had stopped loving him. Rather, it was because she had finally come to love herself enough to walk away from something that was slowly breaking her hearts. In an interview with Vanity Fair, she stated that if there is one person in the world that she would like to be the happiest, it would be him. It is her hope that all of his dreams will be realized. Despite everything that has happened, she continues to wish him well. In that way, you can learn everything there is to know about Giselle as a person. Giselle, on the other hand, was working on a new dream of her own. A life quieter with a man who made her feel like she was being seen. And once that new life was brought to the public's attention, Tom Brady would break down in ways that nobody anticipated. His downfall was brought on by the roast. In the month of May in the year 2024, Tom Brady gave his consent to participate in an activity that appeared to be both harmless and enjoyable. It was planned that he would be the subject of a roast special on Netflix, in which comedians would make jokes about him. A lot of famous people engage in this behavior. You watch as people make fun of you while you sit there and laugh. You are a good sport, as evidenced by this. After football, it turned out to be the most significant error of his entire life. Brady was confronted by a series of comedians who took the stage one after the other. They used his divorce as a joke. They made jokes about Giselle switching to a jiu-jitsu instructor and leaving him behind. The situation in his family was the subject of crude jokes that were told while millions of people watched. Brady sat there and laughed along with the scene. What other options did he have? It had been agreed upon by him. The following morning, however, everything was different. The day after the roast, Brady received a phone call from his 3 children, and it was then that he heard something that broke his heart. There is Jack Moynihan, who is 17 years old, Benjamin, who is 15 years old, and Vivian, who is 12 years old. They were unsure of what to do and hurt. The clips from the show had been shown to them. They had heard strangers use the emotional distress of their family members as a punchline. When his children confronted him with the question, "What was the point of that?" "I don't understand why you did that, Dad." Brady was unable to provide an answer. If you sat there while strangers made jokes about your family falling apart, how are you going to explain that to your children? The question is, how do you explain to them that you believed it would be okay when it was obviously not? When it came to his own children, the man who always had a strategy for everything was completely speechless. After a number of months had passed, he finally admitted the truth on a podcast. The next day, he said, it felt like a stake had been driven through his heart when he talked to his children. The significance of those words spoken by Tom Brady cannot be overstated. The man in question never admits to being weak and never displays any signs of vulnerability. It was at this very moment that he admitted to the entire world that he had caused harm to his own children. After some time had passed, he personally apologized to Giselle for allowing those jokes to be made about her. However, the damage had already been done. Brady was forced to confront something that he had avoided for many years because of the roast, the real value of the decisions he made. He had been absent for Christmas mornings for the past 23 years. It had been a long time since he had celebrated Thanksgiving with his family. Every NFL season was like a military deployment for him, and he asked his wife and children to give up everything just so he could participate. Now that he was retired and seeing the consequences of his own choices play out in front of him, Brady began to ask himself a question that he had never allowed himself to ask before. Were any of the things worth it? While this was going on, Giselle was constructing the life that she had always dreamed of having. In addition, She would soon provide Brady with the conclusive answer to the question of whether or not their marriage could ever be mended. What happened with the baby, the wedding, and Brady's reaction? Everyone who had been following this story was taken aback by the news that came in February of 2025. Gisele Bündchen, who was 34 years old at the time, became a mother for the third time when she gave birth to a son with Joaquin Valente, her first relationship with a person other than Tom Brady, however. After starting a brand new family, the supermodel had changed her name. Next, the 3rd of December, 2025 arrived. Gisele and Joaquin tied the knot in a private ceremony that took place at their residence in Surfside, Florida. This wedding was a wonderful representation of everything that her marriage to Brady was not. The individual is reticent, private, and focuses solely on family rather than fame. What made the situation even more complicated was the fact that Brady was aware of the wedding before it actually took place. There was no surprise for him. He was able to get himself ready for this moment in time he had. This indicates that there is no longer any possibility that he and Gisele will be able to find their way back to each other. There is no way to overstate the stark contrast that exists between them. The relationship that Gisele had found was one that she described as being honest and transparent, having a new baby, a new husband, and a new life that prioritized wellness, family, and being present were all new things for her. It was reported that Brady was dating supermodel Irina Shayk on and off while he was still looking for something. Brady was calling NFL games for Fox, posting mysterious messages on social media, and he was still looking for something. 2 days after the news of the wedding broke, he was back on television, offering his analysis of football as if his personal life was not making headlines everywhere. On the outside, he appeared to be as professional as he had always been. Tom Brady, however, was experiencing a change on the inside, something that would finally convince him to admit what he had been avoiding for more than 20 years of his life until now. The realization that completely alters everything. Tom Brady, who is now 48 years old, admits that he has finally stopped trying to avoid the truth. In the beginning of this year, Tom Brady released a newsletter to his fans in which he attempted to explain himself, not as a quarterback, but rather as a father and a husband. It was a defensive letter that was almost a plea for help. According to what he wrote, he believes that one of the most important aspects of being a great father is setting a good example for caring for one's family by doing whatever it takes. He made the decision to accomplish this by participating in football. He stated that the most beneficial thing he could do for his family was to devote himself completely to the sport, putting in countless hours of practice and maintaining a laser-like focus. By setting a good example for his children, he was teaching them what it means to be committed to one's work and demonstrating what it takes to be successful in one's profession. However, the admission that revealed the cracks in his confidence came around at that moment. According to what he wrote, "You will not be perfect. Not a single person is. Throughout the journey, you will fail and disappoint a number of people." These words were extremely significant for a man who had built his entire career on the principle of refusing to accept personal failure. Tom Brady admitted that he had been unsuccessful. As he wrote, "Your actions are a reflection of the priorities you hold. On a daily basis, you are required to live up to that standard." Yes, that is the case. The confession that was concealed from plain view. The actions that Tom Brady took demonstrated his priorities. Football was the first step, at all times, even when his wife begged him to alter his behavior. Despite the fact that she had written him a letter in which she detailed in details what would occur if he did not comply, a decision was made by him. Now, he is forced to live with it. Totally, Gisele has moved on with her life. Her new husband was initially her friend. She is now married to him. It is a new baby for her. This is the life she has always dreamed of having, one that is centered on her family. She does not harbor any public resentment toward Brady. All that she wants is for him to be happy. The situation is still being worked out for Brady. However, he is still attempting to persuade himself and everyone else that the trade was truly beneficial. At some point, 7 Super Bowl rings are stored away in a case. His legacy will be etched in the annals of football history forever. The amount of money in his bank account is greater than $500 million. However, his ex-wife wed another man not too long ago. His children questioned him about the reason he allowed foreigners to make fun of their family on television. In addition, he is often found sitting by himself and posting songs that are about the sensation that his life does not belong to him. The most successful player in the history of the National Football League is currently dealing with the one defeat from which he will never recover. Football was Tom Brady's decision. The championships, the fame, and the glory were the things that he chose. For the past 23 years, he has made the decision to skip Christmas. After 40 days, he made the decision to come out of retirement, despite the fact that his wife did not believe he was choosing her. His belief was that he could have everything. There is the most successful career in the history of the National Football League, and the ideal family is waiting for you at home. However, that is not how life works at all. There must be a sacrifice made. Furthermore, in the end, it was his marriage that ended up failing. Now, he is observing Giselle as she creates a wonderful new life for herself, while he searches for something to fill the void that has been left behind. When she opens her eyes, she is next to a man who prioritizes her. There is a new baby for her to adore. It is the tranquility that she had been searching for all along, and Tom Brady is able to recall his past, all of his awards. These are his records, which may never be surpassed. The cost of certain victories is something that you do not fully comprehend until many years have passed. Now, Tom Brady is able to comprehend. When he was trying to win one more championship, he was unable to see clearly what he is now able to see clearly. One final season that is flawless. He had one more opportunity to demonstrate that he was the best. It was demonstrated by him. Kelly Clarkson finally broke her silence, and what she revealed about Brandon Blackstock has left fans completely shaken. For years, she stayed quiet, carrying emotional pain, hidden fractures, and a truth that slowly unraveled her marriage from the inside out. Behind the headlines was a reality far more brutal: alleged financial exploitation, legal warfare, and the exhausting feeling of being alone inside a relationship that was supposed to be a partnership. Now, Kelly is no longer holding it in. She's speaking out. And what she's describing is not just divorce, it's survival. A rebuild from absolute zero. From Texas roots to global fame, Kelly Clarkson didn't grow up around privilege or the spotlight. She grew up in a fractured home in a small Texas town where stability was fragile and adulthood came early. Her father left when she was 6. Her siblings were scattered into different households. Raised by her mother, a school teacher, Kelly lived in Burleson, Texas, a place where money was tight and emotional comfort wasn't always guaranteed. Church twice a week, strict values, structure over expression. Joy wasn't promised, it was earned. And yet somehow, from that environment, a global voice was born. The question that follows her story is almost unreal. How does a girl from a burned-out apartment complex become one of the most powerful vocalists in modern music? How does someone once unable to afford a demo go on to fill arenas and later stand in courtrooms and legal battles against the man she trusted most? But her story didn't begin with success. It began with being overlooked. One ordinary day at Pauline Hughes Middle School, Kelly Clarkson was just another student in the hallway, until a choir teacher overheard her singing by accident. That moment changed everything. She was encouraged to audition for the choir. She had no training, no formal preparation, no belief that she was special, but she said yes anyway, and she got in. That single decision, small, uncertain, almost invisible, triggered a chain reaction that would reshape her entire future. Still, the path forward was anything but easy. After graduating from high school in 2000, Kelly was accepted into multiple prestigious music programs, including the University of Texas at Austin, the University of North Texas, and Berklee College of Music. A straight road to stability, a predictable future, a safe version of success. Most people would have taken the safe route. Kelly Clarkson didn't even hesitate. She walked away from college altogether, convinced that real life would teach her more than any lecture hall ever could. So, she entered survival mode. Odd jobs stacked on odd jobs. Telemarketing scripts on one end, waitressing at a comedy club on the other, even handing out Red Bull samples at events just to scrape together enough money for studio time. Every dollar was a step toward a demo she believed might change everything. Instead, it broke her expectations first. The demo didn't open doors, it slammed them shut. Executives rejected her repeatedly, labeling her voice as too emotional, too raw, too difficult to market, not polished enough, not controllable enough, not right enough. In 2001, refusing to disappear quietly, she moved to Los Angeles and tried again. But the city pushed back harder. Every label turned her away. Every opportunity dissolved. And then, as if the universe wanted to finish the job, her apartment burned down, homeless, rejected, out of options. She went back to Burleson with nothing but exhaustion and silence. At that point, there was no indication that anything would ever change. Then came 2002. On a casual dare from a friend, she auditioned for a brand new television experiment called American Idol, a show so untested that nobody quite knew what it was yet. Behind the scenes, everything felt unstructured. Contestants handled their own styling, their own image, even being dropped off at shopping malls and told to find something camera-worthy. There was no system, no polish, no safety net. None of it mattered, because the moment Kelly Clarkson stepped in front of the microphone, the entire trajectory shifted. She didn't just pass the audition stage, she took control of it. On September 4th, 2002, she was crowned the first winner of American Idol with 58% of the vote. A 20-year-old from Texas, standing at the center of a national vote that would change her life overnight. Her debut single, a double release featuring Before Your Love in a Moment Like This, exploded in a way the industry didn't anticipate. It surged from number 52 straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, breaking a record that had stood for 38 years, previously held by the Beatles. And just like that, a new kind of star was born. Not manufactured in boardrooms, not sculpted by executives, but created in real time, in front of millions watching live television. She didn't look like the industry's idea of a pop star. She didn't behave like one either. But she had something more dangerous: absolute vocal power and complete awareness of it. Kelly Clarkson didn't drift into fame, she fought her way into it. Every note earned, every step carved upward through rejection, fire, and silence. However, what she did not know at the time, and what no one else did either, was that one day the man who stood next to her on stage and behind her in business would quietly begin pulling strings that threatened to unravel everything that she had built. In addition, she buried that betrayal for a considerable amount of time, a secret about Brandon Blackstock, as well as the reason why she chose to remain silent. In the course of Kelly Clarkson's career, it was one of the most shocking revelations that she had ever made, and almost no one saw it coming. Kelly was awarded $2.6 million in damages by a California labor commissioner in November of 2023, following 3 years of legal silence and speculation regarding the matter through the courts. The reason for this was that her ex-husband, Brandon Blackstock, had been illegally managing her career for years without a license. He had been doing this in conjunction with his father's business entity. Kelly, who had previously concealed her suffering behind closed doors, had finally reached the point where she was finished protecting the man who had built his life on her voice and her trust. This was a sign of fraud that was hiding in plain sight. What was the reason for her prolonged silence? To what extent did Brandon engage in activities that even her followers were unaware of? To this point. It was during a rehearsal for the Academy of Country Music Awards in the year 2006 that Kelly first became acquainted with Brandon Blackstock. He was reserved, professional, and had a strong connection to others. His stepmother was none other than Reba McEntire, who was one of Kelly's influences in the world of music. No events transpired during that time period. However, 6 years later, their paths crossed once more. And as a result, something clicked this time. They announced their engagement in December of 2012. It was October of 2013 when they finally tied the knot. In appearance, it appeared to be a perfect match from the outside. It was a pop powerhouse, and a man who understood the business, who shared her love of music, and brought a sense of grounded stability to her otherwise chaotic life. Together, they formed a blended family. River Rose was born in 2014, and Remington Alexander was born in 2016. Since Brandon already had 2 children from a previous marriage, they welcomed their 3rd child together in 2016. Through their Instagram posts, they shared pictures of happy vacations, family sing-alongs, and backstage hugs. Couple goals was the term used by fans. On the other hand, Kelly later disclosed that the reality was significantly more difficult to accept. She stated in interviews that she frequently experienced the feeling of being a single parent who was trapped inside of a legal marriage. She was carrying the emotional labor alone, while also attempting to balance her talk show, her role as a superstar, and her motherhood. The emotional isolation was so severe that it eventually became intolerable when it reached its peak. Nevertheless, she did not utter a single word. Not to the general public. It is not to the press. Simply put, she did not stop. Kelly filed for divorce in June of 2020, citing irreconcilable differences as the reason for her decision. This was the first major crack in the relationship. However, that was only the surface level. Afterwards, a methodical and quiet investigation into the activities that had been taking place behind the scenes was carried out. In addition to being her husband, Brandon Blackstock had also been managing her professional career through the company that his father owned, which was called Starstruck Management Group. But according to the law in California, anyone who acts as a talent agent is required to have a license. There was no Brandon. Without having the appropriate legal authority, he and Starstruck had been secretly negotiating major deals for Kelly for a number of years. These deals included sponsorships, live performances, and her participation on The Voice. At the same time that they were pretending to be her trusted advisors, they were illegally taking a portion of her income and pocketing it for themselves. Kelly filed a lawsuit against them. The California Labor Commissioner issued a ruling in her favor in the month of November in the year 2023. According to the findings of the court, Brandon and Starstruck had violated the regulations of the Labor Code, and the court ordered them to repay Kelly more than $2.5 million. Not only did this include commissions from deals that they were never legally permitted to broker, but it also included her massive contract with The Voice. An appeal was submitted by Brandon without delay. However, a confidential settlement was reached between the parties involved in the case in May of 2024, which was only 3 months before the case was scheduled to go to trial. Although the specifics were kept secret, the damage had already been made public. Kelly, for the first time in years, was finally able to speak her mind and tell the truth because Brandon had been apprehended. At the beginning of the year 2025, she stated unequivocally that nobody was aware of what he had actually done. Because I was trying to protect everyone else, but not myself, I remained silent for a number of years. Those words struck a chord. It confirmed what many people had suspected, namely that Kelly had been carrying not only heartbreak, but also betrayal, manipulation, and financial exploitation behind the professionally polished exterior she presented to the world. In order to spare her children, to avoid further press drama, and possibly even to convince herself that it hadn't been as bad as it felt, she had protected Brandon. However, it was the case. When Brandon refused to leave her Montana ranch prior to the divorce, it was one of the most painful chapters that occurred during the divorce itself. Despite the fact that he had no legal claim to the property and that he had lost the argument in court, he continued to reside on the land for several months, which led to the conflict becoming even more drawn out. In the end, he was given the order to vacate the premises by June of 2022. However, the emotional toll continued as well. Considering that the final settlement was reached in 2024, things have started to change. In public, Brandon and Kelly are no longer engaged in a confrontation. Through the process of reaching a co-parenting agreement, they have made it possible for River and Remington to spend time with their father, while Kelly continues to have primary custody of the children. Despite the fact that she has moved on, at least in a logistical sense, the emotional wounds are still present. Not only from a husband, but also from someone who made money off of your voice while claiming to love you. How is it possible for someone to continue living after experiencing such a betrayal? After your silence for so many years, how did you finally break it? When it came to Kelly Clarkson, the answer did not come in the form of a lawsuit or a press statement. Rather, it was when she finally said the one thing that she had been keeping to herself for far too long. Not only did he break my heart, but he also took advantage of the person that I was. As of right now, everyone is aware. Dissolution of marriage, suffering, and restarting. At the time that Kelly Clarkson submitted her petition for divorce in June of 2020, her world had already undergone a series of subtle but irreversible changes. A handful of headlines were all that the public saw. A ranch dispute, custody petitions, and irreconcilable differences are all involved. Kelly, on the other hand, was experiencing the gradual disintegration of a life that she had labored tirelessly to keep together. For a number of years, she had been carrying the emotional burden of a relationship that was gradually stripping her of her humanity. She later admitted that she felt like a single mother in her own marriage during the time that she was trying to raise two young children, while also attempting to maintain a career that was worth multiple millions of dollars, a talk show that was popular, and a public image that was built on strength and authenticity. In spite of the fact that the ground was constantly shifting beneath her feet, the woman who wore her signature smile was struggling to keep everything in its proper place. In late 2020, the court granted her primary custody of the child, but Brandon was slow to relinquish his custody of the child. Their Montana ranch, which was a sprawling property that Kelly had purchased, was the source of one of the most drawn-out disagreements. Brandon was adamantly opposed to leaving the ranch without any explanation. A court order and nearly 2 years of waiting were required before he was finally able to leave in June of 2022. Once upon a time, the ranch had been a symbol of family life and retreat. At this point, it turned into a flashpoint for a more profound and unspoken truth. Kelly had created something that was extremely beautiful, and now she was tasked with safeguarding it from the individual who had previously shared it with her. At the same time that attorneys were negotiating spousal support and asset divisions, Kelly was going through a more subtle transformation that no one could see, at least not yet. She officially changed her name to Kelly Brianne around the month of February in the year 2022. Despite the fact that she retained Clarkson for professional purposes, the personal transformation was rooted in something more profound. Clarkson was a name that had always been associated with her father, Stephen Michael Clarkson, who had left the family when she was only 6 years old. One of her most heartbreaking songs was the result of her channeling that abandonment into another song, He Never Left the Place Where She Wrote, which was called Piece by Piece. In no way did he ever ask for money. It is he who looks after me. We share a love. The lyrics of the song were about the father of her children making up for the mistakes that her own father had made. A bitter irony emerged in that song after the divorce was finalized. It turned out that the man she had once thought had rewritten her story had, in fact, repeated those words. However, Kelly has always been able to reconnect with herself through the medium of music. Chemistry was her 10th studio album, and it was released in June of 2023. Chemistry was unlike anything else she had ever released since she began her career. The album dealt with a variety of heavy emotions, including grief, rage, regret, and the fragile hope of healing. It was raw, experimental, and emotionally charged. The way in which she explored the complexities of emotions without sugarcoating the pain was praised by critics, who praised it as her most honest and mature work. Fans felt a profound connection to her music, particularly with songs such as Mine and Red Flag Collector, in which her lyrics broke through years of silence. In the same year, Kelly hung 4 stockings by the fireplace as part of a cheeky visual promotion for her holiday album. She hung 1 stocking for herself, 1 stocking for each of her 2 children, and a 4th stocking that simply announced, "Nope." The jab was intended to be humorous, but it was unmistakably directed at her ex-boyfriend, and her fans adored it. She began to speak more openly about her struggles with anxiety, therapy, and the pressure of managing public life while raising 2 young children in interviews. She also began to talk about the fact that she was an actress. She attributed her ability to remain grounded to her children and stated that the ability to learn how to be present for them on a daily basis was what inspired her to continue moving forward. It was obvious by the beginning of 2025 that Kelly was not only reestablishing her emotional state, but she was also reimagining everything. After she parted ways with Atlantic Records, she made a move that was among the most audacious she had ever made in her career. For the first time in her career, she took complete control of her creative output by launching her own independent record label. She released her first independent single, titled Where Have You Been?, in the month of May in the year 2025. The song was written and produced by her herself, a quiet declaration of independence, both artistically and personally, the track was a quiet declaration of independence. During that summer, she made her return to the stage with a new residency in Las Vegas called Kelly Clarkson Studio Sessions. The residency was a stripped-down and intimate run of shows that was scheduled to commence in July and continue through November. While this was going on, the Kelly Clarkson Show was entering its 6th season, with strong ratings and a dedicated audience that connected with her sincerity and warmth. She also became a mentor for aspiring musicians, and many of them credited her as the reason they entered the music industry in the first place. She was a figure behind the scenes helping young musicians. Senior professionals in the industry continued to extol her virtues. According to Billboard, she is a phenomenon who possesses an unrivaled ability to transcend genres while maintaining an emotionally accessible presence. Simon Cowell, the individual who was instrumental in her initial rise to fame, encapsulated the essence of the situation perfectly. Kelly did not become famous as a result. This is all thanks to Kelly. Being a mother, treating others, and giving back. River and Remington are the two people who are at the center of Kelly Clarkson's world when the lights are turned off and the cameras stop rolling. Not only are her children, who are 10 and 8 years old, her top priority, but they are also. The emotional core of her existence revolves around them. This is something that Kelly made abundantly clear after the upheaval of her marriage and the agony of being scrutinized by the public. Her children are her top priority, and everything else follows next. While this does not imply that she is unwilling to be loved, it does mean that she is moving forward on her own terms. During an appearance on Today with Jenna and Friends in May of 2025, she disclosed that she is not currently in a relationship, but that she is open to the possibility of experiencing what she referred to as a unicorn moment, which is a moment that is both magical and rare, and even that is contingent on the peace and comfort of her children. Additionally, she disclosed that River and Remy have both expressed a desire for her to remain single for the time being. And rather than dismissing their emotions, Kelly listened to what they had to say. As much as she respects her own emotional space, she also respects theirs. To answer your question, what does life look like for someone who has learned how to live without the assistance of another person? According to Friends and recent reports from June 2025, Kelly is taking a cautiously optimistic step forward. It is not that she is rushing into anything, but rather that she is exploring what a potential future relationship might look like in a way that is cautious, thoughtful, and conducted at a pace that is deemed to be healthy. Whether she is on tour or off, she makes the most of her time alone, re-establishing a connection with herself and discovering happiness in the moments of peace and quiet that she had previously missed. She has stated in a number of interviews that her primary focus is on self-healing, maintaining stability, and setting an example of emotional honesty for her children. She believes that if her children are able to observe her going through difficult times while maintaining her integrity, they will be able to learn how to do the same. The private life of Kelly, however, is not solely focused on healing. It's all about being of assistance. She has been deeply committed to causes that are frequently overlooked by the tabloids ever since the early years of her fame became public knowledge. Participating in Idol Gives Back, partnering with UNICEF, Feeding America and Stomp Out Bullying, and becoming an ambassador for the March of Dimes, where she walked in their campaigns and helped raise money for neonatal care and maternal health, are all things that she did. Through her involvement with House of Hope, a nonprofit organization that provides assistance to orphaned and HIV-affected children in South Africa, she developed one of the most personal commitments she has ever made. It wasn't just a check that Kelly wrote out. She went there herself, met the children, and listened to their stories. After that, she performed a song that she had written in their honor called "You Still Won't Know What It's Like." Then there is the work that she does to rescue animals. There are over 80 animals that Kelly has taken in on her ranch in Texas, including blind dogs, amputee goats, and horses that are recovering from colic. These pets were not merely for show. They required medical attention because they were either injured, abandoned, or medically fragile animals. Kelly made certain that they received it, and she frequently nursed them back to health herself. Unbelievable pain. The kind you don't see, but once you know it's there, you can't ignore it. If you grew up watching The Crocodile Hunter, then Bindi Irwin probably feels like someone you've known forever, right? She's been in front of cameras since she was barely more than a toddler. But here's what no one really saw coming. Behind the bright smile, the endless energy, and those unforgettable wildlife adventures, she's been fighting something deeply personal, quietly, relentlessly. And now, after years of silence, she's finally opened up in a way that's left people stunned. So, for anyone who needs a quick refresher, let's rewind. Because if you somehow don't know who Bindi Irwin is, well, first of all, welcome, and second, get ready. She was born on July 24th, 1998, in Buderim, the daughter of the legendary Steve Irwin and Terry Irwin, a family that didn't just love wildlife, they lived it. Even her name carries a story. Bindi came from Steve's favorite crocodile at Australia Zoo, while Sue was inspired by his beloved dog. It's the kind of detail that says everything about who he was. And her childhood? Not normal, at all, but in the best possible way. She grew up inside Australia Zoo in Birwa, surrounded by crocodiles, koalas, and creatures most people only ever see on screen. School happened at home, carefully balanced between education, conservation work, and an early life in the spotlight. Because yes, she was on camera almost before she could walk. At just 8 years old, she launched her own show, Bindi the Jungle Girl. And it didn't just air, it exploded in popularity. The world watched. And then came something even bigger. At only 9 years old, she won a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Performer in Children's Programming, becoming the youngest winner ever at the time. 9. Let that sink in. And she didn't slow down. In 2015, she stepped onto the stage of Dancing with the Stars in the United States. And once again, she didn't just compete, she won. Alongside Derek Howe, she took home the Mirror Ball Trophy, proving she could dominate far beyond the world of wildlife. She later appeared in Crikey. It's the Irwins with her mother and brother, continuing the family legacy in front of millions. By 2024, she and Robert Irwin had taken on global roles as Earthshot Prize ambassadors, standing at the forefront of environmental change. Today, Bindi Irwin is more than a familiar face. She is the CEO of Australia Zoo, a conservationist, an author, an Emmy winner, a reality TV champion, someone who has spent her entire life in motion, always pushing forward. And in 2020, she added another chapter, marrying American wakeboarder Chandler Powell in a ceremony held right where her story began, at Australia Zoo. The 25th of March, 2021, was the day that they became parents to their daughter, Grace Fighter Irwin Powell. When viewed from the outside, it appeared to be a life filled with nothing but happiness and a sense of purpose. The trouble is, however, that what we perceive on the exterior is not always accurate. During the time when Bindi was doing things like smiling for the cameras and herding crocs, what exactly was going on behind the scenes? The secret conflict that no one was aware of. Let's face it, this is where things start to get significant. I would like for you to remain with me because this particular segment of her story is of the utmost significance. Bindi Irwin has been enduring chronic pain that was excruciatingly painful for more than 10 years, which is equivalent to an entire decade. Certainly not the kind of agony that can be alleviated by taking a few paracetamol and lying down for a while. A type of discomfort that makes it difficult to carry out daily activities, difficult to get out of bed, and difficult to feel like oneself. That kind of agony that follows you around wherever you go, whether it be to work, to dinner with your family, to the camera, or even to bed at night. Even worse, she had no idea why she was acting that way. In her own words, she described the pain as being indescribable and one that could not be avoided. She said that she had been examined for every conceivable condition, including Lyme illness, cancer, and every tropical disease known, as well as every blood test and scan possible. And each and every time, she came up empty, with no answers. There was nothing but more bewilderment, more frustration, and more suffering. And there was no reason tied to it. The doctors continued to disregard her. The discomfort, they assured her, was a natural and inevitable aspect of being a woman. To give that one a moment to marinate, a decade of pain is about to begin. However, the response from the medical staff was essentially, "Yeah, that's just the way it is." The idea was ingrained in her. As time went on, she began to see herself as feeble. She stated that when she was a teenager and a young lady, she had feelings of weakness and profound insecurity, and that she felt as though she was ensnared. Is it really possible to conceive of carrying that? Being one of the most widely renowned names in the field of animal conservation in Australia, putting on a brave face for cameras, interviews, and public appearances, all the while secretly feeling as like your own body is fighting against you and nobody believing you? Furthermore, this is what makes it even more difficult to hear. Bindi was not the type of person who could take a sick day and quietly deal with things at home whenever she felt like it. This is a woman who oversees a zoo that is considered to be among the best in the world, films television, does public lectures, and is present for her family, her animals, and her followers on a daily basis. She had no choice but to proceed, despite the fact that her body was yelling at her to stop what she was doing. It was her intention to keep it a secret. Her goal was to avoid making people anxious. Through it all, she persevered, continued to work, continued to show up, and continued to be Bindi Irwin for the world. Nevertheless, the reality was that she was falling apart on the inside. And for a full decade, she did all of this without even having a word for what was wrong with her. She knew she was doing something wrong. Without a diagnosis, without a path map, and without a community of people who understood. Simply suffering, which is repeatedly disregarded as something that should be tolerated without complaint. The majority of us will never be able to truly comprehend the level of strength that you possess. On the other hand, it is a degree of unfairness that ought to have never occurred in the first place with the circumstances. At what point did she eventually receive responses? Moreover, what did such responses actually indicate to us? Everything was altered as a result of the diagnosis. In March of 2023, Bindi Irwin made a shocking announcement on Instagram, which she then shared with the public. It had been determined that she suffered from endometriosis. In the event that you are unfamiliar with endometriosis, allow me to provide you with a thorough explanation. The disorder known as endometriosis is characterized by the development of tissue that is analogous to the lining of the uterus on organs other than the uterus, such as the ovaries, fallopian tubes, and other organs. There are roughly 190 million women around the world who are affected by endometriosis, as stated by the World Health Organization. Simply put, that is an enormously large number. Nevertheless, the average amount of time it takes for a diagnosis to be made for many of them is between 7 and 10 years. 7 to 10 years. Does this sound familiar to you? Because it is roughly equivalent to the amount of time that Bindi had been in pain before anyone was able to determine what the true cause of her misery was. In addition to causing extreme discomfort, particularly around the time of menstrual cycles, the illness can also have an impact on fertility. As a result of the fact that the symptoms are frequently disregarded as being typical of period pain, millions of women, including Bindi, find themselves without a diagnosis for years. People tell them to take ibuprofen, tell them to push through, and tell them that they are being dramatic. They are sent home. For all intents and purposes, it is one of the most pervasive and aggravating shortcomings in the field of women's healthcare. Doctors removed 34 endometriosis lesions from her body during her initial operation, which took place at the beginning of March 2023, after she had finally received her diagnosis. It's not a trivial amount of people. Nevertheless, this was only the beginning. Dr. Tamer Setkin, a specialist in endometriosis who works at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City, was the one who carried out the surgical procedure. In addition, Bindi didn't hide the fact that choosing the correct physician, specifically a surgeon who specializes in excision surgery rather than ablation, was the single most important factor in the outcome. It was also brought to the attention of her mother, Terry, who made it a point to mention that in the comments section of Bindi's article, asking other ladies to especially seek out excision surgeons. Why is it important to make that distinction? Mainly due to the fact that ablation, which is the more usual method, effectively burns the lesions off the surface, which can leave the roots behind and allow them to come again over time. The process of excision, on the other hand, involves completely removing the lesions, including the roots. The procedure is more complicated, but it provides significantly superior long-term benefits for a significant number of individuals. The fact that Bindi was willing to discuss that in public is perhaps the single most important factor that has assisted thousands of women in asking the appropriate questions during their subsequent session. The response from the general population to her declaration in 2023 was tremendous. Her comments were filled with women from all over the world, all of whom said, "I believe you, and I do as well. I am grateful that you have given this a name." Witnessing someone as well known as Bindi finally admit out loud that the pain is real and that it is not something that can be dealt with by simply toughening up and coping with it was a truly life-changing experience for a great number of them. On the other hand, Bindi's health odyssey was not even close to being finished. Just when you think the story is coming to a close with a diagnosis and some relief, things took a turn that was even more dangerous. What took place after that? It was an emergency surgical procedure. Nobody anticipated what was about to happen. From this point on, things are going to get pretty intense. To tell you the truth, this is a very good indication of how severe endometriosis may be if it is not recognized and treated at an early stage. In spite of the fact that Bindi was continuing her treatment for endometriosis, she ultimately required emergency surgery in the United States on the occasion. During the course of that treatment, the medical professionals uncovered further endometriosis lesions, and also determined that her appendix required removal, which is referred to as an appendectomy. She also underwent surgery to correct a hernia that she sustained during childbirth. Take that into consideration for a moment. A hernia repair, an appendectomy, and other lesions were removed all at the same time, thanks to an emergency operation. Following her triumph over the situation, her husband, Chandler Powell, referred to her as the most resilient individual I am familiar with. And, to tell you the truth, I feel like that is an understatement. During the course of her therapy, she has had over 50 endometriosis lesions removed from her body, according to the most recent information, which was released on her own Instagram account in late March 2026. This information was shared during Endometriosis Awareness Month. There are 50 lesions. In addition to that, she had a chocolate cyst that caused her ovary to actually adhere to her side. Add to that the appendectomy. In addition, the repair of the hernia. Her precise words were, "I have experienced pain that is indescribable and cannot be avoided." Regarding the emotional toll that all of this has had, she also said something that is really illuminating. She referred to a cyst that was so severe that it was causing her ovary to get attached to the wall of her body. And she had been going about her life, working at the zoo, filming television, and being a mother to Grace, all the while her body was doing all of those things without her knowledge, while she was smiling for photographs, while she was giving interviews, and while she was feeding crocodiles. Even in the face of everything, she continued on. It was not because she did not feel it. Rather, it was because she had no other option, and because she is passionate about what she does. What does all of this imply for Bindi at this point in time? And what are the ways in which she is utilizing this extremely distressing chapter to actually bring about change for other women? Bindi's mission and the bigger picture. Regarding Bindi Irwin, here is the thing to know. Over the course of her life, she has never been the type of person who simply sits on something when she could be doing something about it. It was not the way she was brought up, but it's obvious that she's not wired in that way. In addition to telling her tale, she did not simply move on. It became a full-fledged lobbying effort for her to undertake. During the Blossom Ball that took place in May 2024, she was presented with the Blossom Award in recognition of her partnership with the Endometriosis Foundation of America, also known as EndoFound. She frequently discusses the problem, encourages women to keep looking for answers, and advocates for endometriosis to be recognized as a severe medical condition rather than being disregarded as nothing more than cramps or something that women are forced to go through simply because they are female. She made a post on Instagram in March 2026 that was addressed specifically to anyone who might be experiencing pain. Should you be experiencing discomfort, my heart aches for you. I have faith in you. Please look for the answers. Additionally, do not give up on yourself. I am aware of how challenging that can be. It is possible that those 3 words appear to be straightforward to you. On the other hand, hearing that from someone with Bindi's platform is a tremendous deal for women who have spent years being ignored, being told that their suffering isn't genuine, and being sent home without solutions. In doing so, it affirms something that the medical system has consistently failed to validate for them. This message struck a chord with a much larger audience. In total, more than 3,600 people commented on the post. Another professional from Dancing with the Stars, Whitney Carson, made a comment in which she referred to Bindi as courageous. Terry, the mother of the girl, expressed her immense pride in her daughter for sharing her journey in a letter. Bindi's honesty made them feel recognized for the first time, and fans and other women who suffer from endometriosis came in from all over the world, stating that they had been told the exact same thing. That their suffering was just a natural part of being a woman, and that they had been told the same thing a decade before. A single commenter summed it up perfectly. The number of women who are taught that it is considered to be a natural aspect of being a woman is really upsetting. Educators and medical professionals both have room for improvement. This is something that Dr. Kathy Huang, who is the director of the Endometriosis Center at NYU Langone Health, has made quite obvious. The most significant key message is that experiencing pain is not typical. Now, Bindi is living proof that the message was conveyed. She went from being one of those patients who were disregarded to becoming one of the most prominent and reputable voices proclaiming to other women that they are entitled to having their questions answered. She is also continuing to carry on the legacy of her father, Steve Irwin, in every other aspect of her life, including the management of the Australia Zoo, the doing of conservation work, the upbringing of kids, and just simply being a force of nature in general. Additionally, her brother Robert, who is 22 years old, has been vocal about the significance of taking women's health seriously, as he stated in an interview with E! From the beginning of time till the present day, women's health has been a topic that has received insufficient attention and inquiry. Advocates, both male and female, are desperately needed to take a position and spread the information about this issue. Because Bindi is not the only one carrying this discourse, it is important to take a moment to reflect on the comment from Robert. This is important since it involves her entire family. When important males in a person's life, such as brothers, husbands, or fathers, begin to express their opinions on the subject of women's health, the discourse undergoes a significant transformation. The animals, the planet, and most importantly, each other, are all members of this family that are always there for one another. In light of everything that has transpired, including the 10 years of pain, the several operations, and the more than 50 lesions, where does Bindi genuinely stand today? The question is, what does her transformation actually look like? This is the true transformation. When people talk about the shocking transformation that Bindi Irwin has undergone, some people are thinking about the physical aspects of it, such as how she has looked different at different points over the years, the fluctuations in weight that are frequently associated with conditions such as endometriosis, and the visible signs of someone who has been through a lot of medical challenges. Not only that, but all of that is a fact. There are observable symptoms of endometriosis that manifest in the body, including bloating, inflammation, and changes in hormone levels. It is not inappropriate to accept that fact. What is the true metamorphosis, though? There is a great deal more depth to it than what can be seen in a photograph. On the other hand, the Bindi Irwin who stood in front of the world a few weeks ago and stated, "I was trapped in my own body," is not the same Bindi who spent 10 years suffering in silence and being told that she was hallucinating things. That version of Bindi, the one who felt ashamed, weak, insecure, and unheard, has been replaced by someone who faced that decade of anguish dead in the eye and said, "Not only did I survive this, but I'm going to make sure that other women don't have to go through it alone with something like this." There has been a change in status. This is an example of growth. That is strength in a form that does not always appear like the shiny highlight reel version that we are accustomed to seeing on social media. When she was afraid of being perceived as weak, she kept an invisible illness completely private. However, she eventually became one of the most prominent public voices in the conversation around endometriosis awareness. She went from being disregarded by medical professionals to taking the stage, working with medical organizations, and lobbying for improved treatment options and a more expedient diagnosis for millions of women all over the world. All of this was accomplished while she was a mother, while she was operating a zoo, while she was carrying on the heritage of wildlife conservation that her father had left behind, and while she was practically recovering from numerous major surgeries. That is not a trivial matter at all. Wow, that is just remarkable. Her surgeon, Dr. Tamar II, highlighted her as someone who underwent the whole excision process, which is the method that he advocates for in order to truly remove endometriosis lesions, as opposed to simply burning them off with ablation. Additionally, Bindi made it a point to publicly acknowledge his existence, to refer individuals to his work, and to direct fans to the Endometriosis Foundation as a repository of information. Rather than simply telling her story and then leaving, she stayed. People received a roadmap from her. Bindi also revealed that she is finally beginning to recover after a search for answers that lasted for 13 years. And lastly, as soon as you realize what it took to get there, that word has a different impact on you. A decade without a term for her anguish, 13 years, more than 50 lesions, many surgeries, and now she is finally healing from her condition. Her willingness to share her thoughts has spurred the discourse. It's far larger than she is. This is for any young lady who has been advised that she is acting overly dramatic. Each and every woman who has endured years of agony while being referred to a variety of medical professionals, but has received no solutions. Every single mother who has ever witnessed her daughter go through pain and felt absolutely helpless. Bindi provided all of those individuals with something of great value, namely a voice and the confirmation that their suffering is genuine and that they are deserving of being heard when they speak. There is a transition that is worthy of being discussed. In addition, this is precisely the reason why everyone is talking about Bindi Irwin at the moment. It was not because of the drama or the controversy that she did it. Rather, it was because she took 10 years of suffering, shame, and quiet and turned it into something that could truly assist other people. This is the kind of shift that is truly significant. Approximately 190 million people around the world are affected by endometriosis. Alone in the United States, there are 9 million of them. Because the typical amount of time that passes between the onset of symptoms and the diagnosis is still between 7 and 10 years, this means that there are millions of women in the world who are going through exactly what Bindi went through right now, as you are watching this. Not accepted. Without a diagnosis. I am in discomfort. Just deal with it, it was told to me. If you or someone you care about is experiencing that, please do not give up. Attempt to find answers. Seek out experts in the field. Visit the website endofound.org to learn more about the Endometriosis Foundation of America. Know that your suffering is genuine and that you are deserving of being believed. This is the most crucial thing. I am now interested in hearing from you. At the beginning, I kept asking myself, what am I going to do? Is this it? Am I done operating forever? The fear didn't come all at once. It crept in, quiet but relentless. There was uncertainty, shock, even a lingering sense of trauma, because it didn't happen in isolation. It happened while the cameras were rolling. Sandra Lee, known to millions as Dr. Pimple Popper, had built something extraordinary. What started as a small dermatology clinic in Southern California had grown into a global phenomenon, amassing over 6 billion views. Patients came not just for treatment, but for trust, for someone who understood their skin, their insecurities, their stories. And on that day, everything seemed routine. The set was ready. The crew was in place. Patients waited, hopeful. She stepped into her role as she always had, calm, precise, in control, until something shifted. At first, it was subtle. Then it wasn't. A sudden wave of heat, intense, unnatural, swept over her. This wasn't fatigue. This wasn't a long day catching up. Her body felt off. Her mind slightly clouded. But she was a surgeon, composed, disciplined. She had built her entire career on control. So she kept going. She finished the procedures, spoke to the cameras, moved through the day as if nothing was wrong. She convinced herself it was something minor, maybe just a hot flash. But that night, the illusion began to break. At her parents' home near the clinic, something felt deeply unsettled. Restlessness took over. In an interview with People magazine, she later described it simply, she couldn't relax. A sharp, shooting pain pulsed through one leg. Then came the moment that couldn't be ignored. Walking downstairs felt wrong. Balance faltered. Movement didn't respond the way it should. Her body was no longer reliable. By morning, fear had taken shape. She raised her left hand and watched it collapse. No control, no strength. Then she tried to speak. The words didn't come out right. They twisted, incomplete. Something was seriously wrong. I noticed I had a tough time articulating, she said. I thought, am I having a stroke? And here is where the story cuts deeper than expected. Because Sandra Lee is not just a patient, she is a physician. She has spent decades studying medicine, diagnosing conditions, and recognizing warning signs instantly. She knows them: face drooping, arm weakness, slurred speech, confusion, loss of coordination. She had nearly all of them. And still, she almost didn't go to the hospital. Not because she didn't understand, but because the symptoms didn't arrive the way people expect. This is the hidden reality researchers have warned about for years. In many women, stroke symptoms don't always present clearly. They blur. They disguise themselves as something else: fatigue, sudden sweating, restlessness, vague discomfort. And in that critical window, doubt becomes the most dangerous delay. For a woman in her mid-50s, these warning signs are almost always dismissed, explained away as something familiar, something manageable: menopause, a hot flash. Sandra Lee had the same instinct. That's what she told herself. Just a hot flash. But her brain was already under attack. That morning inside the same house was her father, Soon-Seng Lee, a retired physician who had built the very practice she now leads. He took one look at his daughter and didn't hesitate. No second guessing. No delay. His response was immediate. Go to the emergency room. Now. She went. And the moment she crossed those hospital doors, everything changed. A part of my brain died. The MRI results were final. No ambiguity. Sandra Lee had suffered a full ischemic stroke, a blockage cutting off blood flow, starving brain tissue of oxygen. The damage begins instantly. Every minute without treatment, nearly 2 million brain cells are lost. Gone. Permanently. There is no reversal. No recovery of what's already gone. It was just a shock, she later said, because even as a physician she saw the signs: slurred speech, weakness on one side, and still questioned reality. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe it was temporary. A dream, until it wasn't. Then came the sentence that stopped everything cold. What essentially happened is I had a part of my brain that died. For most people, that's already overwhelming. But for her, it cuts deeper. Her entire career depends on precision. Her hands, her vision, her voice. The steady control that allows her to operate with exactness. The calm presence that reassures patients. The clarity on camera built a global identity. And in a single moment, the stroke targeted all of it. She didn't avoid responsibility. She named the risks herself. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, chronic stress, all present, all uncontrolled. Her neurologist, May Kim Tensor of Keck School of Medicine of USC, placed her case into a larger, more unsettling pattern. Stroke rates are rising, nearly 15% higher among adults aged 45 to 64. At 55, Sandra Lee sits directly in that zone. This isn't random, it isn't rare, and it isn't just bad luck. A generation of high-performing professionals, particularly women, who have been pushing their bodies past the point of warning for years, and then asking why the bill is due, is the subject of this narrative. An immediate halt was placed on the production of the second season of Dr. Pimple Popper, Breaking Out. There are 20 episodes scheduled, a fresh new show on Lifetime, and a second opportunity to pursue a career in television when TLC decided to retire. On a morning in November of 2025, everything came to a halt because a physician who had spent her entire career offering assistance to other people had neglected to take care of herself. On the other hand, the woman who had a solution for the skin issues that everyone else was experiencing did not have a solution for what was going on within her own head. It is necessary to travel back in time to a remote clinic in Malaysia during the late 1960s, and to a young physician who was absolutely out of his element in order to comprehend the magnitude of the loss that Sandra Lee was exposed to. It was Dr. Soon, the individual who had borrowed the book. Seng Lee had been born into a poor family. He was one of 10 children and spent his childhood in Singapore. Irene, his wife, was also one of 10 children who were raised in a household that had very little. She was born and raised in Malaysia. Through pure perseverance, they were able to build a life for themselves, meet, and study together. In spite of the fact that Soon-Seng was proficient in general medicine at the time he was working as a medical officer in rural Malaysia, he was completely perplexed by skin disorders. It was his solution that eventually became the basis for everything. He informed Practical Dermatology that he was able to accomplish this by hiding behind the privacy curtain and flipping over a small book on skin illnesses that had been left behind by a care medical team from the United States. I found that my interest in dermatology grew with each reading of this book, and eventually I made the decision that I would pursue a career in the field of dermatology. In 1969, Soon Seng and Irene made the journey here to the United States of America. In December of 1970, Sandra was born in Flushing, Queens, exactly 1 year after her parents had immigrated in the United States. Southern California was the new home for her family when she was 5 years old. In the city of Upland, California, her father established Skin Physicians and Surgeons, which is the same practice that Sandra currently operates. Throughout her childhood, she was surrounded by dermatology, textbooks everywhere, and photos of skin diseases that would horrify the majority of children found on coffee tables. It was not horror that Sandra felt, rather, it was fascination. She received her degree in biology from UCLA, then went on to continue her medical education at Hahnemann University in Philadelphia. It was on the very first day of orientation that she met Jeffrey Rabish, who would later become her husband. Jeff was originally from Westchester County, New York, and had participated in athletics while attending Dartmouth. When he entered medical school, he was considering a career in orthopedics. That was altered by Sandra. In dermatology, he accompanied her into the field. On May 28, 2000, they tied the knot and went on to establish a family as well as a medical business in Upland together. Yet, her journey was not straight. However, Sandra was not able to match into a dermatology residency when she completed her 4th year of medical school. This was the specialty that her father had chosen because of a book that he had borrowed. The field in which she had been brought up, she did not enter when she was older. Several years later, she remarked that it was as if she was living in a dream. Could this truly be taking place? Over the course of a single blink of an eye, I even pondered emergency medicine. She eventually matched at Southern Illinois University, finished a residency in San Diego under the tutelage of the well-known laser surgeon Dr. Richard Fitzpatrick, and then returned to California to take over the clinic that her father had established. Her father's response to what transpired after that was completely typical of a human being. Patients would often make the remark, "Oh, you are Dr. Soon Lee's daughter," which I would hear them say. "Oh, you are Dr. Sandra Lee's father," is the only thing I hear at this point. It was after this that she took a step that would forever alter her life. 6 billion views and an idea that was taken from another source. Sandra Lee launched a channel on YouTube in the month of October in the year 2010. Almost no one viewed the very first video, which was uninteresting and professional in appearance. During the course of 4 years, the channel served primarily as a digital advertisement for her medical business. After that, in 2014, she featured an Instagram photo that featured a blackhead removal. It spread like wildfire. She had been motivated by the sight of a hairstylist, racking up millions of views on the internet, while demonstrating various hair treatments. Would it be possible for me to accomplish this? She questioned herself because dermatology is a specialty that relies heavily on visuals. To begin, she began posting. Those who were watching were unable to stop. By the year 2015, she was using the name Dr. Pimple Popper and creating extraction films that she uploaded to YouTube on a regular basis. Over 75 million people have watched the film that is the single most popular video, which shows a gigantic blackhead being removed from an 85-year-old woman. It was a straightforward and efficient business plan for her. Patients received treatment at a reduced cost, or for free, in exchange for signed consent to be videotaped under the circumstances. Every single person left content. Fans of hers, who refer to themselves as Popaholics, have grown into a group that numbers in the millions. The television show about Dr. Pimple Popper was a foregone conclusion by the time TLC brought it to their attention in 2018. Through its 9 seasons and 111 episodes, it became the most popular cable program in its time slot among women aged 25 to 54 after it made its debut on July 11, 2018, and it lasted for a total of 9 seasons. Over the course of 3 consecutive years, she was awarded the Critics' Choice Real TV Award for Female Star of the Year. Through her efforts, she established SLMD Skincare, which eventually became available in more than 1,600 Target locations across the United States. She is the author of a book, On television, she made an appearance late at night. When she was at the height of her success, her YouTube channel was bringing in close to $100,000 every single month. She did not vanish despite the fact that the show was canceled by TLC in 2023. She made the transition to Lifetime with a new format called Dr. Pimple Popper Breaking Out, which included a mentorship component and was the first time that she aired her personal life on camera. The first season premiered in April of 2025. The second season, which would consist of 20 additional episodes, was given the go-ahead in August of 2025. This was Jeffrey's first job as an executive producer. The fact that the machine was operating at a faster speed than it ever had before was precisely the issue. When she suffered a stroke, she was attempting to deal with the situation, but it halted everything for her. The process of recalling how to hold a scalpel. Sandra Lee did not put in any work for a period of 2 full months. No film was made by her. She was seldom ever heard in public. She had extensive physical and occupational treatment beginning in November 2025 and continuing through January 2026, during which time she worked on what she referred to as extremely fundamental aspects of her existence, improving her balance, walking in a straight line, and strengthening her grip on her left hand are all important. As far as Sandra Lee was concerned, the stakes were quite exact. The fact that she had a weak grip on her left hand was more than simply an inconvenience. The fact that she was unable to do surgery was directly jeopardized by it. Proficient control of fine motor skills, calm hands, and constant precision are all necessary for dermatological operations. She expressed her dissatisfaction with the fact that she did not have complete control of her left hand. It's a pretty worrisome feeling whenever I have the impression that I'm not performing at my best. Her speech also changed in ways that she claims the majority of people are unable to hear, but she is always aware of these changes. Currently, I am aware of the fact that my speech may not be exactly the same as it was in the past, she said. Due to the fact that you are aware of it, you feel extremely embarrassed to speak. Even for a lady who has spent years speaking in front of cameras in front of millions of people, self-consciousness is real, and it is something that is relatively new. She finally made her way back to the set in January of 2026. She stepped back into the previous environment, which was the one in which her brain had begun to die. Patience, the operating room, and the cameras all played a role. She described it as being really terrifying for her. Due to the fact that it occurred while I was recording the show, there is a significant amount of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The symptoms of a stroke do not go away immediately. Dead brain cells cannot be brought back to life. It was the first time in Sandra Lee's professional life that she was confronted with a problem that she was completely unable to resolve. Instead, she was forced to take it in stride. Additionally, she discovered something that none of her 6 billion viewers had ever seen from her before as a result of her decision to live with it. In Asian cultures, the meaning of the term stroke. She had the ability to keep this information confidential. November of 2025 was the month that the stroke occurred. January of 2026 was the month when she went back to work. People in the public did not know. Episodes were being shot at the time. There were patients being examined. All of the people who were not in her inner circle were completely unaware of what had taken place. She had the option of allowing the second season to air, allowing the footage to speak for itself, and allowing people to make their own assumptions in real time. As an alternative, she decided to go with People magazine, which featured an exclusive interview that was published on April 14th, 2026, along with images taken at her residence in Los Angeles. Everything is described in detail here. In the same interview, she also provided an explanation as to why coming out was such a challenging endeavor. Because it is considered a show of weakness in Asian cultures, people do not disclose that they have suffered a stroke to others. This is especially true in Asian cultures. During the entire conversation, she stated that the statement in question was the most significant. Yet, it was the one that received the least amount of attention. There is a Chinese American in Sandra Lee. The origin of her father is in Singapore. It is Malaysian to her mother's mother. She was brought up in a society that places a high emphasis on stoicism, that views illness as a private affair, and that holds the belief that public vulnerability is synonymous with personal failure. The immigrant drive that brought her parents to the United States, that pushed her through medical school, that established the clinic, the brand, and the television series. is in direct opposition to the kind of openness that she decided to exhibit in that interview with People. She was going against all that her upbringing had taught her about how a strong person deals with weakness when she broke that silence. Irrespective of the circumstances, she went ahead and carried it out. In the event that you have symptoms similar to those I had, it is imperative that you seek an appointment with your physician. Be sure to look for yourself. Additionally, the time of the disclosure was carried out on purpose. She appeared in public for the first time 6 days before the launch of the second season on Lifetime on April 20th, 2026. The program features footage that was taken on the day that she suffered a stroke and during her rehabilitation. She exerted control over the manner in which the story was conveyed by speaking first. Her choice of framing was made. This language was chosen by her. Her worst moment was transformed into a discourse rather than a spectacle, and she made the decision to do so, a gift that is hidden from view. When Sandra Lee describes the stroke as a blessing in disguise, she does so without displaying the kind of expression of appreciation that is typically heard from those who have survived something that they are unable to sufficiently comprehend. She explains it in the same manner as a physician would describe a diagnosis. Clearly, she has previously investigated everything from every conceivable perspective, as a matter of fact. The fact that it serves as a reminder to take better care of yourself is something that I wish to consider to be a blessing in disguise instead. There was no maintenance performed on the machine that is Sandra Lee for a number of years. Ah, the whole scope of surgical surgery. Oh, the YouTube channel that needs to add new stuff on a regular basis. On television, there are 9 seasons of a show. She was acting in the same manner as millions of other high-performing people. She was out and about picking up the bill. Prioritizing the task as an urgent matter at the moment, she was treating the warning signs as if they could be managed at a later time. Due to the stroke, that calculation was fully terminated. After 2 months of physical therapy, using blood thinners on a daily basis, performing exercises at home before going to bed, and regularly checking the numbers that she had neglected for years, she is moving at a rate that is slower than it was before. Not because she made the decision to do so, but rather because her body insisted on doing so. And during that compelled pause, she received clarity on something that she had not anticipated. It definitely wakes you up to the fact that life is extremely valuable. She has returned to the screen. Beginning on April 20th, 2026, the second season of Dr. Pimple Popper, Breaking Out, will be broadcast on Lifetime, and it will consist of 20 new episodes. Her hands are engaged in labor. Her voice is very similar to what it used to be. According to her neurologist, the majority of her symptoms have been alleviated by the many external measures that she has undergone. The entirety of this story, however, conveys a weight that no headline has ever been able to really capture. In a Malaysian jungle, her father made the discovery of dermatology by reading a book that he had acquired while hiding behind a privacy curtain. He came to the United States with absolutely little, established a practice from the ground up, and brought up a daughter within that practice who would go on to become the most watched dermatologist in the history of the world. When that same father looked at his daughter in the hallway of their home many years later, he noticed the stroke written over her face and her body, and he made sure that she was sent to the emergency hospital in a timely manner. It is not enough to say that Sandra Lee survived a stroke. A single morning in November was the day that she managed to endure the moment when all she had been given, everything she had built, and everything she had put at risk, all came crashing down around her. As she made her way back to the location where the event had taken place, she turned the cameras back on and made the decision to let the entire world witness exactly what had transpired. The story of a woman who came dangerously close to losing everything is not like that. This is the tale of a woman who discovered the true meaning of everything at some point in her life. At what point does a brand finally step in and say, enough? When does it shift from silence to legal action? When someone claims a part fits a car, prices it differently, and puts a name on it? That line exists somewhere, but no one seems to know exactly where it is. And then there's the part that doesn't add up. Matt Armstrong has spent years doing what most wouldn't dare, rebuilding wrecked supercars from the ground up. Lamborghini, Ferrari, machines worth hundreds of thousands, sometimes more. He's poured in real money, genuine parts, countless hours, while generating tens of millions of views that spotlight these brands to a global audience. And what did he get in return? Nothing. Not a message, not a thank you, not even acknowledgement. But then, one morning, something changed. A package arrived at his workshop. Not from Lamborghini, not from Ferrari, from Koenigsegg. A brand he had never owned, never rebuilt, never even touched. So why them? Why now? And somehow, how does the growing tension around Bugatti fit into all of this? At first, it barely made a ripple. Then suddenly, it was everywhere. Matt Armstrong isn't easily impressed. He's torn apart hypercars worth more than most homes, pulled engines from Huracans, rewired hybrid systems that others wouldn't even attempt. Surprises don't come easily to someone like him, but this one landed differently. The package came from Engelholm, home of Koenigsegg, and inside, not parts, not tools, branded hoodies, t-shirts, premium merchandise, not the kind you find in stores, because Koenigsegg doesn't really do stores. This is a company that builds at most 20 to 35 cars a year. For perspective, Toyota produces that number in seconds. Their merchandise isn't casual, it doesn't circulate. It ends up in the hands of clients, people who just spent millions on a single machine. And yet, here it was, sitting in a workshop, addressed to someone who had never owned, featured, or rebuilt one of their cars, which makes it even stranger when you understand how Koenigsegg operates. No influencer gifting campaigns, no scattered PR boxes hoping for exposure. Their communication is minimal, controlled, and intentional. When Ferrari or Lamborghini sends something, it's part of a system, a structured marketing pipeline. This wasn't that. This was something else. When Koenigsegg makes a move like that, it's never random. It means someone inside that factory made a deliberate choice. One person, one decision, aimed at one specific individual, and that distinction changes everything. But here's what truly set the conversation on fire. It wasn't just the merchandise. Hidden inside was a handwritten note. Not a sales pitch, not a sponsorship offer, something far more intentional. The message told Matt Armstrong to watch certain videos, specific ones, which means someone inside that Swedish factory had already been watching his content. That single detail flips the entire narrative. This wasn't a PR checklist, not an intern sending out packages for exposure. This was calculated, personal, precise, a quiet signal from one of the most selective, most secretive manufacturers in the world. And the timing? That's what made it hit differently. Because this didn't happen in isolation. It came right after the growing tension surrounding Bugatti, and that context changes everything. To understand why Koenigsegg's move matters, you have to understand the environment Matt Armstrong was already navigating. Something had just shifted in the automotive world, the so-called Bugatti drama, and it exposed something that had always been there, but rarely seen so clearly. For years, Bugatti has operated with an exclusivity that borders on absolute control, not just over who buys their cars, but who services them, who touches them, who even gets close to their engineering. There are documented cases of the brand enforcing what's known as a right of first refusal, the ability to step in and block certain buyers from acquiring one of their vehicles. It's not just luxury. It's gatekeeping at the highest level. A private club where entry is decided behind closed doors. And then came the moment that brought it into the open. A high-profile case, a content creator with massive reach and genuine passion, suddenly pushed out of the equation. Details varied depending on where you looked, but the message was consistent. Some legacy brands don't see independent creators as allies. They see them as a risk, a disruption to the image they have spent decades controlling. For Matt Armstrong, this wasn't theory. It was reality. He had already lived it. He invested heavily to acquire a crashed Lamborghini Reventon, one of just 21 ever built, and committed himself to restoring it. Not partially, completely, every detail, every component. The cost of parts alone reached staggering levels, and through it all, the silence from the brands remained. Lamborghini's engineering received a tremendous amount of attention as a result of this. And what was the response of the brand? There is no sound. On the other hand, Ferrari experienced the same thing. Matt had been deep in the process of repairing a Ferrari 296 GTB, a car that even Ferrari-licensed technicians had apparently trouble with. He was doing it on video for millions of people to watch, and he was using authentic OEM components that had been procured at a high cost. Neither brand made any attempt to contact us. Both of them did not admit what he was conducting. And in the wake of the Bugatti scandal, that quiet seemed to be more audible than it ever had been before. The circumstances surrounding the arrival of Koenigsegg's package are as follows. There was more to it than just a box of products. The signal, which was sent at precisely the appropriate time, conveyed the message that we are aware of you and that we are not like them. How did Koenigsegg come to this conclusion, and why was it a strategic move? Just at this point, things start to get actually intriguing, because Koenigsegg's actions were not completely arbitrary. The way in which this corporation conducts its business is guided by a philosophy that is highly purposeful. In addition, if you get a firm grasp on it, the bundle will make perfect sense. Christian von Koenigsegg established his company in 1994, despite the fact that he had virtually little financial backing, no ancestral automotive empire, and no undergraduate degree in engineering. It was when he was 22 years old that he made the decision that he wanted to construct the world's fastest car. During the subsequent 3 decades, he established a corporation that was more than just a hypercar manufacturer. It was widely considered to be among the most forward-thinking engineering company in the entire planet. There are several world records that Koenigsegg possesses. They succeeded in developing the technology of the free-valve engine, which completely does away with the conventional camshaft arrangement. They developed a vehicle known as the Jesko Absolute, which is capable of reaching speeds of up to 330 miles per hour. They came up with a gearbox that they known as the light-speed transmission, which is capable of shifting gears at a rate that is faster than any other gearbox now in use. It is important to note that Koenigsegg is not a brand that makes decisions only based on its past and reputation. In all honesty, they are completely preoccupied with engineering. Additionally, Christian von Koenigsegg is well known for being exceptionally approachable to the public. He gives interviews, he explains technology, and he gets thrilled talking about tolerances and thermodynamics in a manner that the majority of CEOs of premium firms just do not. In a lot of respects, he is the automotive version of the guy who just truly enjoys what he does and wants other people to enjoy it as much as he does. This relationship is made abundantly clear when that lens is used to the channel that Matt Armstrong is maintaining. Matt is not the type of person who creates videos for the purpose of demonstrating how quick a car feels or how comfy the seats are. He works his way underneath it. During his presentation, he discusses the engineering process behind the gearbox, the construction of the carbon tub, and the mapping of the electronics. He has over 5 million members at the time of the package, and his audience consists of people who are interested in learning about automobiles rather than simply being wowed by them. That is precisely the population that Koenigsegg is looking for. According to the message that was placed inside the box, which requested that Matt watch particular videos, it appears that Koenigsegg's staff had targeted specific content that they wanted Matt to view. Their engineering breakdowns, videos of their production process, or content regarding their fundamental technology are very probably going to be included. In no way were they trying to sell him a car. In addition to demonstrating to him what things are made of, they were also encouraging him to be curious. When it comes to outreach, that is a totally different kind. And for a company that manufactures fewer than 40 automobiles annually, the value of that kind of relationship-driven marketing that is focused is incomparably higher than the advertisement that is broadcast on television. A look at Matt's past with the major brands and the reasons why the difference is so painful. It is necessary to spend some time thinking about the things that other companies did not do in order to get a full appreciation for what Koenigsegg accomplished, mainly due to the fact that Matt Armstrong's relationship with Lamborghini and Ferrari is not on a purely casual level. Within the same time span, it is arguable that he has contributed more to the public view of those businesses among younger audiences than their entire marketing departments have done individually. The Lamborghini Reventon is a good place to begin. One of the rarest Lamborghinis ever produced, this particular model was only ever produced in a total of 21 units. Following the acquisition of a damaged specimen, Matt made the decision to undertake a comprehensive restoration. He did this by locating authentic original parts, chronicling each step of the process, and bringing millions of viewers along for the ride. It was a significant expense, not only in terms of money, but also in terms of time and the level of difficulty involved. This is not an automobile that has a supply chain that is simple to work with. Finding and authenticating each component requires a great amount of effort on the part of the author. Then, there is the Aventador, which is another flagship Lamborghini that Matt brought back from what many people would have regarded as a dying condition. And the Ferrari 296 GTB, a hybrid hypercar that represents the pinnacle of Ferrari's road car technology and which Matt was in the process of rebuilding as the camera was rolling. A project that had garnered a significant amount of interest from viewers. Builds like these are not inexpensive. The turnaround time for these flip jobs is not that short. It is necessary to have actual skill, genuine investment, and genuine respect for the engineering in order to fulfill these long-term restoration promises. Furthermore, in each and every instance, the manufacturers of the automobiles that were being praised, explained, and rescued from the garbage heap did not disclose any information. Without any appreciation, no offer of partnership, no discount on parts, no invitation to the plant, and not even a social media sharing, there was no acknowledgement. The reason for this should be made abundantly obvious. The image architecture of the Italian supercar manufacturers is heavily entrenched in the concept of exclusivity, accomplished through scarcity, not just of the automobiles themselves, but also of the experience they provide. The visual does not lend itself well to the concept of a car being disassembled and reconstructed in a YouTube workshop, regardless of how professionally it is done. It removes some of the mystery behind the product. The nuts and bolts are explained here, and this presents a challenge for brands that have spent decades establishing a position that is almost legendary. Koenigsegg does not have any such aversions. The videos of the teardowns are posted by their engineers themselves. Christian von Koenigsegg has been seen sitting in front of a camera and providing a detailed explanation of how their technology operates within the company. They do not have any concerns about becoming comprehended. Indeed, it appears that they are actively seeking it. The cultural gap between companies that safeguard mystery and a brand that celebrates transparency is at the core of the reason why Koenigsegg made the decision to travel in a direction that Lamborghini and Ferrari never went. What is the next step? There are 3 possible stages that this could develop into. Now, we are at the point where the automotive community is actually enthusiastic about what is about to happen, mostly due to the fact that a box of items is only the opening. When you read what Koenigsegg actually did in this situation, including the precise note, the curated content recommendation, and the careful scheduling, you will see that this is a connection that is being formed from the ground up. When you map out the potential locations for it, the magnitude of the problem becomes more apparent. A stage that has already taken place is referred to as the first stage. Making contact has taken place. Matt is familiar with Koenigsegg's work. He is now aware that Koenigsegg is paying attention to what is going on. It is the basis of everything. The visit to Engelholm, on the other hand, is the next step that is both natural and the one that the majority of people in the community are waiting for. When compared to other automobile plants, the Koenigsegg factory is unique. It is a military air base that has been turned into a factory operating more like a bespoke workshop than an industrial unit. It is located in the southern region of Sweden. Hand assembly is used for each and every automobile. Only a few people are employed. The levels of tolerance are quite remarkable. A video of Matt Armstrong walking through that facility, seeing how the carbon fiber monocoques are laid up, seeing how the engines are assembled, and sitting down with Christian von Koenigsegg to go into depth on the light-speed transmission or the free valve system would be the most unique thing that the automotive YouTube space has ever produced. This would not only be a good performance, a point of reference would be established by it. The second step is an experience that involves driving. The driver of the fast cars is Matt. There are some truly speedy pieces of machinery that he has been behind the wheel of. Nevertheless, he has never experienced performance on par with that of Koenigsegg. The Jesko Absolute is capable of reaching a theoretical maximum speed that has never been achieved by a road car in any testing. When it comes to acceleration, the Regera, which is a hybrid hypercar with more than 1,500 horsepower, is so violent that even the most experienced drivers find it impossible to comprehend. Koenigsegg would be aware of the fact that a video chronicling Matt's first encounter of that kind of performance, in the context of his technical understanding of how it is performed, would be an exceptional piece of content. A build project is the third stage, and it is the one that would actually bring about a change in the situation. Although it may sound audacious, it is not completely out of the question. There have been times in the past when Koenigsegg has been exceptionally forthcoming with their engineering. In the event if a situation developed in which a damaged or development sample became available, and Koenigsegg made the decision to involve Matt in documenting a rebuild, sharing technical data, enabling factory access, and allowing the process to be presented, this would be an unprecedented event in the history of automotive content. It would also, almost unintentionally, abolish the culture of blacklisting manufacturers, which has been a source of frustration for independent producers and rebuilders for many years. The fact that Koenigsegg has already demonstrated a willingness to let outsiders inside their universe in ways that other manufacturers just won't is something that should be taken into consideration. In his appearances on engineering-focused podcasts and channels, Christian von Koenigsegg has provided explanations of technical aspects that the majority of executives in the automotive industry would never discuss in public. Having a precedent is important. It refers to the visit to the plant, the experience of driving, and the construction project. When it comes to Lamborghini or Ferrari, none of these are as implausible as they might appear to be at first glance. When it comes to Koenigsegg, the door is not simply a wide open one. Over the course of several years, it has been progressively opening up, and this package presents itself as an invitation to go through it. There is no evidence to support any of this, yet none of it is fantastical either. It was a genuine presentation. There was indeed a note. Moreover, the manner in which Koenigsegg conducts its business operations provides evidence that the organization does not act without a specific purpose in mind. This is the wider picture. It is important to take a step back from the specifics for a moment and examine what is actually taking place here, because the situation is much more significant than a single creative receiving a package of merchandise. The automotive sector is currently experiencing a substantial cultural transition that is well underway. It is no longer the case that the conventional gatekeepers, manufacturers, glossy magazines, and official press fleets have a stranglehold on how the general public understands and appreciates automobiles. There are YouTube channels, such as the one owned by Matt Armstrong, that have created audiences that are comparable to or even beyond the readership of major automotive periodicals. And these audiences are not passive. These individuals are technically involved, have a profound loyalty to the brand, and have a genuine influence on how others feel about automobile manufacturers. Brands that recognize this fact at an early stage are putting themselves in a position to gain a huge competitive edge. Regardless of, or possibly even because of, the extraordinary exclusivity of their product, Koenigsegg has demonstrated that they were aware of this fact. In no way are they attempting to install a Koenigsegg in each and every driveway. They will never do so. They want millions of people who will never buy a Koenigsegg to think about the brand, talk about the brand, and feel something about the brand. Their entire business strategy is founded on scarcity, but they want a lot of people to think about the brand. Moreover, the most effective method for accomplishing this goal in the year 2024 is by utilizing producers such as Matt Armstrong. This moment is particularly significant because of the contrast it draws with the brands that have been operating for a long time. Both Ferrari and Lamborghini have combined revenues that are in the billions of dollars. They have marketing budgets that are far more than the total annual turnover of Koenigsegg. Koenigsegg, on the other hand, is a corporation that employs a fraction of the workforce, constructs a fraction of the automobiles, and operates on a fraction of the budget. In terms of automotive creator relations, that was the most astute move that was made this year. Just think about how much money Koenigsegg actually spent in order to make this happen. A handful of t-shirts, a few sweatshirts, and a note that was written by hand. It is highly likely that the entire cost of that product was even less than £100. By doing so, they have resulted in the generation of thousands of hours of community debate, comments on social media, and real curiosity about the brand among millions of people. That kind of return on investment is something that no marketing agency on the planet can offer. The following is an illustration of what it appears to be when a brand knows the current landscape instinctively rather than via the use of a corporate strategy deck. This is not a rallying cry. It is a romantic connection. Relationships, on the other hand, are worth more in the long term than any advertisement, as any individual who works in business will tell you. A message is also contained within this for anyone who has ever had the sensation of being ignored by the organizations or industries that they have invested their time and effort into. There was no effort made by Matt Armstrong to garner notice. Despite being ignored, he did not post about it. Just like that, he continued to construct, continue to document, and continue to be genuinely good at what he does. In the end, the appropriate individuals were aware of it. It wasn't the people he'd been working with for years, but rather someone who was observing from across the North Sea and who saw what he was doing for what it truly was. It is still in the process of being written, regardless of whether this will develop into a full-fledged partnership, a factory visit, a driving experience, or something that none of us have even conceived of yet. On the other hand, the very first page was a box for Engelholm that contained a note that read, "Watch these videos." Furthermore, when viewed in the perspective of everything else that had been going on in the world of automobile creators, that unassuming act spoke more than any news statement could possibly hope to convey. The brands that you support the most are not necessarily the ones that will come through for you, but if you continue to do excellent work for a sufficient amount of time, the correct brands will find you. Now, this is the point where we would like to hear from you. When people consider what Koenigsegg accomplished, they perceive something that is truly uncommon in the field of automobile manufacturing. A producer that genuinely acknowledges and appreciates the work that independent creators accomplish. It is a corporation that is aware of the fact that the future of brand building is not going to be through press launches or billboards, but rather through the establishment of trust through genuine interactions. Nevertheless, there are many who examine the same scenario and perceive something that is more calculated. A small company with a very limited marketing budget making a very clever and very calculated play to link themselves to a creator who has 5 million subscribers and a following that is rapidly rising. Certainly kind, but in the end, it was a corporate move that was disguised as a simple gesture. I think we've captured the difference, not just in the voice, but in the person I've become over the last 2.5 years. But how does a shy, bullied teenager with a once-in-a-generation voice walk onto Britain's Got Talent, leave the judges speechless, and still lose to a dancing dog? This isn't just a talent show story. This is Jonathan Antoine, the opera prodigy who went viral overnight, stunned the world, then slowly slipped from the spotlight. A journey shaped by bullying, heartbreak, a transformation, and a turning point no one expected. March 24th, 2012, the moment everything changed. 17 years old, standing on that stage beside Charlotte Giaconelli, just 16, two teenagers, a classical duo, and to most people watching, they didn't look like contenders. The judges didn't hide it. Simon Cowell took one look, nervous, overweight, dressed like any ordinary kid, and the skepticism was immediate, the kind of glance that says, "This won't go far." The other judges weren't any different. It was uncomfortable, almost cruel, because behind that moment stood a boy who had already endured years of bullying, now facing doubt in front of the entire country. Then, he sang. The first note of the prayer didn't just land, it froze the room. Simon's expression changed instantly. Amanda Holden's eyes widened. The audience erupted before the first verse was even finished. This wasn't good. This was something else entirely. Jonathan's voice rose through the theater, powerful, controlled, filled with emotion far beyond his years. When it ended, the reaction was explosive. Simon Cowell, the same man who doubted him seconds earlier, now compared him to Luciano Pavarotti. One of the greatest tenors in history, the shift was staggering. "You are one of the most amazing talents I've ever heard." And just like that, the internet lit up. Millions of views, global headlines. Overnight, Jonathan transformed from a bullied teenager into an international sensation. But then, everything twisted. During the auditions, Simon made a suggestion that stunned everyone. Go solo, leave Charlotte behind. On national television, he implied the partner who stood beside him was holding him back. Still, the duo pushed forward. May 7th, the semifinals. Caruso, powerful, controlled, enough to carry them into the finals on May 12th. They performed the prayer again. Another standing ovation. It felt inevitable. Victory was within reach. Except, it wasn't. They came second. Beaten by Ashley and Pudsey, a dancing dog act. Yes, a dancing dog. The moment hit hard. Jonathan later described it as feeling everything drop inside him. But on that stage, he didn't cry. So was that the end? Or the beginning of something bigger? Because here's the truth. On Britain's Got Talent, second place doesn't always mean second best. By the very